gospel lesson for today is from Gospel according to Mark, 13th chapter, beginning 28th verse. From the fig tree learn its lesson. As soon as its branch becomes tender and puts forth its leaves, you know that summer is near. So also, when you see these things taking place, you know that he is near, at the very gates. Truly I tell you, this generation will not pass away until all these things have taken place. Heaven and earth will not pass away, but my words will not pass away. But about that day and hour no one knows, neither the angels in heaven nor the Son, but only the Father. Beware, keep awake. You know not when the time will come. It is like a man going on a journey when he leaves home and puts the slaves in charge, each one with his work, and commands the doorkeeper to be on watch. Therefore keep awake, for you do not know when the master of the house will come, in the evening, or at midnight, or at cockcrow, or at dawn. Or else he may find you asleep when he comes suddenly. And what I say to you, I say to all, keep awake. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
This isn't unfamiliar with us because we've talked about it in recent weeks. In 1 Thessalonians, we talked about their concern and the delay that they were worried about. You remember that group of Christians in the early church was wondering how it could be that they were beginning to die and Jesus had yet to return. And you might have wondered where they get this idea that they would not die before Jesus returned. Well, it could be that they got that word from Jesus. That they got that idea from how they understood what Jesus had to say. He said, truly I tell you, this generation will not pass away until these things happen. Now in their mind, they probably heard, truly I tell you, this generation will not pass away until these things happen. We probably would have heard it that same way. What we've done now, looking back 2,000 years, said, oh, he meant generation in a figurative sense. Like humanity, all things, people being the way we are, it's been since the beginning, it'll keep being the way it is. We make it a metaphor, but they heard, you won't die until all this happens and I come back. And so they were wondering why it was that they were beginning to die and Jesus hadn't yet come back. Maybe you're wondering what these things are supposed to be before Jesus returns. They're familiar language to us. We hear people speak of them a lot. We hear throughout Mark 13, Jesus sort of talks about the things that will happen, the beginning of the birth things. He says the temple will be destroyed. And you all know that the temple was destroyed way back in 70 AD, almost 2,000 years ago that the temple was destroyed. So he said that would happen, and it did. He says in Mark 13, many will claim to be the Messiah, and you may know that people before Jesus, people at Jesus' time, and people since Jesus have claimed to be the Messiah, so he was right on that account. He says there will be wars and rumors of wars. Can you name a period in history when there have not been wars or rumors of wars? He says families will turn on each other. Now we've just come through Thanksgiving, so we know that's the case. There have been Thanksgivings before, other families have turned on each other too. Earthquakes and famines will come. I heard recently that there are 300 earthquakes a day in our world. 300 earthquakes each day. Now we hear about the big ones, right? The ones that cause major calamity. And every time we hear about that, someone says, this is the sign, this is the one, now we know it's about to happen. Never mind that there were 300 earthquakes yesterday, and there'll be 300 earthquakes tomorrow, but that is going to be the one. And I hear that kind of conversation, and I think people just want to know. They're desperate to know when will this be? My cynical part of me wonders if it's not because they want to know when to turn the light, right? If Jesus will tell me when he's coming, I'll do what I want till about here, make a change, and we'll all be happy when he gets back. There's part of us that sort of says, I will live my life for me up to the point when I need to start living it for him so that I can make sure I live after this life with Him. I think God is wise not to tell us when the return will happen. I think it's better for us not to be motivated by a fear of Jesus' return, but rather a motivation by love of Jesus now. That we're not waiting for some certain date to get us straight with God. We're ready now, that this is the time now. There's no reason to wait, because life is better with Jesus now than waiting for some other time to make some change later. This is the time to give our lives. We've been doing seconds and thirds in our family this week. We don't mind recycling our food around our house. The lectionary has given us seconds and thirds on this message. We heard it in the beginning of November. We're hearing it again today. John the Baptist will remind us next week. There's this idea in these scriptures that we read that we need to hear again and again, this calling to keep awake, to be alert, to be attentive to Christ, because at any point He may be back. And I think as time goes on, as we get 2,000 now years from when He departed this earth, we think, well, it just probably won't ever happen. And so the scriptures are good to say, get ready, be alert, stay awake, keep your hearts and minds on God. That's the message of Advent. Every year, every single year, this time of year, the message from the scriptures is get yourselves ready. Deb and I were having a discussion the other day about the candle colors. You may have noticed that the ones you see more prominently are 3 purples and 1 pink, and now we're starting to see blue. We were talking about why that is. Just as a refresher for you, there was a period in time when Advent was considered to be a very, very somber part of the Christian year. Much like Lent. Lent purple, Advent purple. And the idea was you were really going to dig in deep. What is it that separated me from God? Where am I not being holy? What is the sinfulness in my life? And you're going to confess it, and you're going to change, and you're going to be very somber during that period of time. It was so somber, so tough, so heavy, that they put in that pink candle, because we needed a break, a fresh air. We needed one Sunday of joy in the midst of these 4 weeks of oppressive kind of inward looking and confession, to say, okay, there is some joy in this. Well, my hunch is that we don't need that pink candle much anymore. That most of us have 4 pink candles going on. We just have a whole series of celebration rather than much inward looking. We don't get so serious, so somber during December that we need a break from it. So maybe that motivated the switch to the blue, or maybe there was this idea that we could focus on the preparation side of things. That blue would be a new color, a new symbol of getting ready. That's what Deborah talked about, preparing for celebrating Jesus' birth. And then there's also this sense, equally important, that we prepare for Jesus' return. So all the work we're doing right now about getting ready to celebrate His birth again, that's great and it's important, but there's equal amount of emphasis to be placed on preparing not just for celebrating a birthday, but to celebrate return, and to have our lives ready for His return. So when we do things like prepare a manger, it's meant to say, okay, that was a great thing that happened then. We give thanks for it, but we're also going to prepare our hearts like a manger, that He'll be able to be born in there in a new way and lead us to a more holy life. The whole design is to tell us to keep awake. 2,000 years later, keep awake, stay alert, be attentive, give your life over to being ready for His return. And then the question becomes, how will you keep awake? We talked a few weeks ago about keeping awake by doing, right? If the Lord came back today and you were caught doing the work of the Lord, well, you'd be okay. You'd be celebrating the fact that you were caught doing the Lord's work. There's nothing to fear if your lives are spent doing what it is God would have you do. My guess is that as a congregation, we'd be more likely to be called doing God's work the concern for me personally, and then maybe for you, is will I be caught awake in my heart and spirit? So my body might be awake and doing, but will I be asleep in my heart and mind? That's where my concern is this time. So it's this balance, right? We want to be found doing God's work, but we also want to be found doing it for the reasons that we're awake and attentive and alert in God. We're connected with God. It's not just doing because our body is sleep-serving, sleepwalking, going through these motions of doing, but for no real connection with God. All right, I don't do this to you often, but I'm going to show of hands, a real live, literal show of hands. How many of you have your trees up already? Sinners. Ours is okay. Just kidding, not sinners. I think it's great. Ours went up yesterday, and we're going to do the decorations today. Part of it is that festivity, that excitement of it. But one of the great gifts to me of having it pretty much ready is when those boxes and storage containers go away and the decoration's done and all that stress, joy is behind us, then I will spend more time in front of those trees in the next 4 weeks than I don't sit in my living room a whole lot otherwise. But I'll go and sit in that living room, and that'll be preparation, right? I will try, and I think I'll succeed because I'm so bad at it the rest of the year, at praying more, at reading the scriptures more, at thinking more, contemplating more. I will spend these next weeks doing the things that will help me connect with God in a deeper way, so that by the time Christmas arrives, I hope I'll be closer to God than I am today. That will be the gift of this Advent season of preparation. And what I notice every time, no matter what season it is, when I spend a little more time trying to connect more deeply with God, then I pay more attention to the rest of my life around me. And at some point, whether it's in the evening or early morning, at some point I'll recognize that, that church member really inspired me with the thing she did yesterday. Or those words that he said, they've revealed something to me that I wouldn't have heard had I not stopped and listened again and paid attention. Or getting to play games with my children is really a gift, not a distraction. When I slow down enough to look back on the day, I'll think, what a gift it is to have these people in my life. What a gift it is to be able to connect with them while connecting with the God who was.